Hi, and welcome to Disability Inc., Include NYC's podcast series, where we engage in honest conversations about disability with parents, educators, and people with disabilities. I'm Sherelle Cruikshank, and I am the proud executive director of Include NYC. And for those of you who may not know much about us, Include NYC is the leading provider of training and information for young people across New York City with any disability from birth to the age of 26, and we support their families as well as the professionals that support them. As a citywide nonprofit, Include, who was able to support and assist over 16,000 people in 2023, and we reached more than 500,000 people through our communications and community outreach, all for free of charge to our participants. We envision a world where there is love, equity, and access for all young people with disabilities. And that's why I am so excited to kick off our new series called Seizing Joy, Building Communities. And excuse me, our first guest is Jackie Senzo, the executive director and founder of SNAC. Welcome, Jackie.
Thank you for having me, Sherelle. I'm happy to be here, and I love Include, so I'm happy to help support whatever it is you're doing. I think this is a great idea.
Oh, thank you. We always want to give parents something to help support them in any way. And today we're going to talk about seizing joy. So can we start by giving us a glimpse into your life several years ago and what made you start Snack?
Sure. So again, I'm Jackie Cianzo. I'm the founder and executive director of SNAC. It's a program for kids of all abilities. I'm the mom of two young men now, I guess. My oldest boy, Joe, is now 29, and he's on the spectrum. Profoundly so, as we've all evolved, we have new names for things. So when I say that, it should mean he's non-speaking. He's got some medical comorbidities, seizure disorder. He can be aggressive. He has been at times. He can be self-injurious. So that's what that means. And for our family, when my boys were 8 and 4, I couldn't find any place where Joe could go like his brother Andrew could for recreational activities. And, rightfully so. I mean, he was complicated. It was the fact that the special needs programs wouldn't take Joe that was really the impetus for me to begin our own program, someplace where I know not only Andrew, but Joey could both be welcomed and learn soccer and sports and all the things that kids do. And 20 years later, we're still at it. I'm sorry to say there's not as many things as I wish had developed for kids at the end of the spectrum Joe is, but there has been a lot of programming that's opened up for kids all over with issues. So that's why I started SNAC, and that's why we're still doing it. And I'm sure lots of folks who call you would Include know exactly what I'm talking about.
I am absolutely sure about that. You speak for many parents that I know experience the same thing. So it's good to know that there are programs out there that can support everyone. I mean, that's what inclusion is really about, right? So you started Snack, and fast forward now, your son is about how old?
Joe's 29 and Andrew's 25, so I'm old. That's all that tells you.
They're older.
Yes, yes.
So
I
what
said,
does
I think
life
we
look
age in
like?
dog years, though, when you have a kid with disability. I age, and it's not 1 year at a time. It's like in clumps.
I understand that. So, what does life look like now for Joe in terms of opportunities?
Um, well, listen, we've been through some really rough times with Joe. The teen years, I mean, as most families can probably identify with. And as we're talking about seizing joy, it's those times you feel like you're never going to get through, but you do. So I can tell you that. So life now, for Joe, is he's living a self-directed life, which is a Medicaid funding stream. That's come on, I guess, right around when he was 18, where he gets a budget from the state, and as complicated as we all know, as going through the DOE, it's not that much different going through OPWDD services, but it's there and it's helpful. And it's been a choice for us to help Joe have a pretty full life. He has staff that helps him. He still needs 24/7 arm's length supervision. I don't know that that's ever going to go away between his medical conditions and his his impulsivity and his sometimes aggression. He really needs supervision. But having said that, when you read him on paper and you look at him in real life, I should have brought some pictures. He's the happiest guy. He has a full week. He takes classes in the community, a lot of them at SNAC, and in other places. He has a job at Columbia University working in the dining hall. He really probably has lunch longer than he works, but it's a good opportunity for him to be out in the community. We've set him up in his own apartment. It's a work in progress. We're transitioning him to full-time with staff. But I never thought that would have been possible when Joe was 8. So it's
That
all about
sounds
your
like a blessing.
expectations. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
That sounds
Not
like a
easy,
blessing.
but it can be done. It can be done.
So tell me a bit about how you've been able to find joy in the midst of the many struggles that you've experienced with Joe and trying to find services that really met his needs.
Well, I think, educating myself, and places like Include have been part of our journey for sure. Educating ourselves about what our rights are, what Joe's entitled to, or what Joe's eligible for, because now I know those are two different things. That's been very helpful. Joining advocacy groups, getting involved with, the disability councils in the various boroughs. Those things have been very helpful. That helps me. If I know I can have a plan and I can ask people for help and we can kind of set ourselves up to the best of our ability, that's very freeing to me and that brings me joy. Feeling bogged down and feeling like I have nobody to call and nowhere to go and woe is me and I'm alone doesn't usually get me in a good place. So not everybody has to start their own program. I took it a little bit to an extreme, but helping my family help ourselves has been very liberating for me. Very liberating for me. Also, my expectations for what Joe's success is going to be as we've gone forward. Now, I do have a typically developing son, so that kind of gives me some sort of a barometer, although Joe's older. So really, Andrew made out in this because I had no expectations for him. So by the mere fact that he can talk, he's ahead. But being realistic about, what I want for Joe, rather than always finding what he can't do, finding what he can do and working with wherever he was at whatever stage of life, whether it was home therapists at school, his programs with swimming or sports, of those things, being realistic in what does success look like. And it may not be certainly what it is for Andrew, but that doesn't mean Joe can't achieve things. It's about our perception of it. And I've been known to set myself up to be disappointed. So putting those things in check have
Mm.
really helped. Not putting limits on Joe. I don't mean that.
Hmm.
I mean being realistic.
Okay, so that sounds like you're looking at how to set up yourself for success with and for Joe and
Right.
managing your expectations. How did you start doing that? Can you give me like an example?
Well, all of my examples are always like horrifying ones, but that I've adapted. So, for example, Joe has a seizure disorder. Okay. So when Joe would have a seizure, I didn't know how I was going to get through it when it first started. And I learned to say, okay, well, how long is it? Oh, well, it was only a minute. It wasn't even a minute. So setting myself up for things like that, how long is this thing we're in going to be? And knowing it always ends. That
Hmm.
has been a great strategy for me, and I have applied that to many things. How long does a tantrum last? How long does a seizure last? Because it's manageable that way. So that's kind of how I've set myself up. If we're going to take Joe we're baseball fans. So we wanted Joe to be able to go to the baseball game with his brother and his mom and dad. But rather than going for 9 innings and thinking we were going to just take Joe into a louded stadium with noise and crowd and food and bathroom concerns, we did it as 1 inning and then we left. And it took us maybe 2 years. And now Joe doesn't want to leave when we go. So that's what I mean about setting
Okay.
yourself up for success. Short, sweet, and successful. I've heard that from many other parents. It's a great
Short, sweet, and
formula.
successful. I like
It,
that. Short,
it's a
sweet, and successful. So taking baby
whatever it may
steps
be.
towards your outcome,
Right.
your long-term goal of what you want the outcome to be. And then sounds like you have to adjust sometimes what you think you want that outcome to be until you get to a place that works for Joe.
Well, listen, exactly. Like the baseball game, for example. Does Joe know when somebody stole home plate or, got a home run? Maybe not, but he claps with everybody else. He can participate. He's not a spectacle. For him, it's his dignity that matters to me. And, I know things bother him when he thinks he stands out in a crowd. It's because he reads that off of us. But for him to be able to participate is sometimes the success, just being able to be there. And that, I don't know
Absolutely.
that I would have ever set that as a goal when he was 2.
Right, right, right. So you talked about the fact that Joe kind of reads your emotions. He can read when you're anxious. How do you reduce your anxiety? What helps to make you feel less anxious?
Well, again, those strategies of time, I can't tell you that a timer, the time, the breaking things out into manageable steps, that definitely helps me. But when we're in a real pickle, you know, it's the same
And that
thing.
happens.
Same things I do with Joe. Let's count it down. Let's take a deep breath. Let's focus on something else. Um, you know, that's really been very helpful for me. Not trying, really, the biggest strategy I would say is trying not to put myself into situations I can't get out of. I don't drive
Okay.
alone with Joe anymore,
Okay.
because I listen, I think all of us as parents in this situation have probably have some sort of post-traumatic stress disorder from being in some sort of thing that didn't work. So rather
Mhm.
than subjecting myself to that all the time and failing and having a panic attack, I just try not to put myself in that. So if I'm going to go somewhere with him, make sure I have somebody with me. Does it really matter? Does it really matter? Do I have to do that? There's certain things you
Right.
have to let go of. And, I'm longer in this game than most folks are. And I'm not saying, change your whole life, but you have to adapt a bit. I think that's, and be okay with it and let yourself be okay with that. And I think that that's been very helpful for me. And the families that I have come to love and be around a lot in the same boat.
Ah, you must have read my mind because I was just gonna
Mhm.
ask you. So tell me about your community, your support system, and you just kind of said that the families that you've come to love. Tell me about how that came about.
Well, I can tell you about my own experience, and then I can tell you about the families that have become my family. Um, the family you choose. I think many of us in this situation, and I think we all read it all the time. I am not immune to it. Our own families are sometimes one of those expectations we set ourselves up for disappointment with, thinking that they're going to really understand how our life is. And at Thanksgiving and other holidays, like all of a sudden everybody's going to get it. And that's another place you set yourself up generally for disappointment. So that's something that I've worked on. I've tried to set the same expectations with family situations. Personal family, that I don't get disappointed. But I have found two communities really. As I said, my other boy is a typically developing boy, and I'd have my foot in that world. And it was so interesting. His sports activities, his school events, such a different experience than being in the world of Joe's and special needs, and just a different thing. The example I use a lot is bringing the cupcakes in for birthdays. Such a different experience in the two places. Again, you got to set yourself up for what the expectation is, right? Of how it's going to be, because they're two really different experiences. But my friends with typically developing kids, and you hear different things on this, they have been my anchor and my support in terms of starting a not-for-profit and helping me to have a world where Joey and Andrew could be together. They were all for it and they did everything they could to help. Do they always understand what we go through? No. But when I couldn't take Andrew somewhere or I couldn't be somewhere because something happened with Joe, they got me. They backed me up. So that's a good resource if you're in that world. Now, if you're not, your world is all the special needs world. It's a great group of people too that can help each other. We're a little bit more reluctant to ask somebody to help us with our kids, though. We're all a little bit hands off about that. But it's a great community to share. Well, what therapy do you go to? And where do you get that? And what agencies do you find? And where do you just, kick back and talk about things? And a lot of times people want to avoid that. And I think that's not a good idea. You got to really immerse yourself. And sometimes, generally, most of us find our friends at school. And for our various situations, when you're in our world, your kids aren't necessarily going to school where you live, where you don't necessarily have that community. You got to make that happen. You got to get involved. And if I could say that strongly enough, I'd screech it from the rooftops, because the schools definitely need the help and you all need each other. Try not to avoid it. It's not something you all know you're there. So
Mm-hmm.
try not to avoid it and try to participate.
So do you get moments where it's just about you and not about Joe or Andrew or school or snack or
You got to make those times. I try. I don't do as good a job as I should. We all talk about making time for yourself with one of the things that I've tried to do about that is dealing with the issues that present themselves having Joe in the house, like, does he sleep? Um, if there's some sort of behavior going on, there are things that make home life more challenging than your average household. And I find dealing with those things, not the whole thing, just breaking it down into the manageable things that make home life easier to live. You gotta sleep. I can't be sleep deprived. I mean, I can't. So whatever it is that we got to do to make sure Joe sleeps, then we all sleep. You can't have a sleep
Mhm.
deprived household, because then I don't care what kind of strategies and where you're going to get a manicure and a pedicure, you're a miserable person. So
Right.
you can't. And it's just sometimes those basic fundamental things that we ignore that helps me stay out of the bad zone. So
Okay.
sleeping, eating, you hear so many people say, oh, he doesn't eat anything. He only eats this one thing. Those things that really bother you, that would make life at home easier. Those are the things that I really have tried to focus on. That's really helped me. That has really helped me. And I tell
Okay.
parents that. And sleep is usually my number one thing. Sleep, toilet training, and eating. If they've got food allergies and food aversions, it makes life impossible. You can't
Mm-hmm.
go anywhere. You can't do
Right.
anything. You're
Right.
putting yourself in your own prison.
Okay. Even though I'm sure that there are some, you can get around those things somehow, I guess, by like bringing food with
Yeah,
you to make sure that, they have what they need and you can still enjoy some time out with them. I think
right.
what you said earlier is about really looking at how do you calibrate and readjust yourself, right? To make it work.
Well, I think it's an ever changing landscape, and acknowledging that and realizing the plan that I had 5 years ago is probably not the plan I need now. I think we generally live in 5-year plans. This is going to be for 5 years, but you got to have a good plan, but then you can't not look ahead. And many of us have a tendency to do that because the future is scary. And I think having the ability to do that, you only get better at it. The more you adapt and the more you learn to be able to say, yeah, well, this worked then, but now we need to just tweak this a little bit. And then that gets you through the next stage. Because these guys, we all talk about the stage when you can't pick them up and run out of the room anymore. That's a very big change to our lives. And you have to kind of be prepared for it and have a plan for it. And, whether that be medication or different therapies or whatever that is, you got to have a plan for it. And then, of course, the big elephant in the room, when the kids turn 21, you know,
Mm.
it's coming. And the time to plan for it is not June 30th of their 21st birthday.
Absolutely.
We need to
Absolutely.
really face that, the guardianship, all the things we know. It just takes that anxiety. Not that the answers are there necessarily, but we're not hiding from it. I think, to me anyway, that is much more anxiety producing than saying, okay, well, this is going to be a problem, but at least I know what it is. And I know I'm not alone. And there's other people like that. So let me inform myself and let me make a plan. And then that is just freedom to me.
You talk a lot about information, something that it, you know, Include is really built on is making sure that families have the information they need to make informed decisions and to also plan for their future. So planning is really important, right?
Yes.
Um, and sounded like you said flexibility in that planning is equally important, knowing that that plan could change at any moment. Um, what do you recommend in terms of, do you think 5 years is a long time to plan ahead for someone with a disability?
Well, I think it's good to have a range. I mean, obviously, a shorter term plan is within that 5-year plan, but taking
Mm-hmm.
a glimpse at the landscape ahead, whether it be turning, what the first stage is what, 3 to 5, and then it's
Mm-hmm.
5 to whatever, and then that
Mm-hmm.
12 to 14, that's another time. You probably need a different plan.
They
And then,
turn teens and they have different needs, wants, desires, all of that, right?
and if we could predict that, puberty wouldn't be such hell. But that's just count on it being a challenge, and then you won't be so blindsided potentially. It'll be challenging. There's no two
Although
ways about it.
also listening to you, and I'm sure you can probably attest to this, is that it's not planning is you need to plan for your typically developing child as well, right?
Yes.
It's not that you're only planning because you have a child that's with a disability, but typically planning children as a parent, you're always planning for what their future is going to look like. And and one of the things that we didn't talk about is preparing our kids for when we're not around to plan and take care of it. Have you thought about that? And
About dying, I think about it all the time. It's, a fact of life. And in our situation, it's just, even more so a complicating factor. So again, being prepared, guardianship, special needs trusts, looking at the financial landscape, that has helped to prepare. Um, the special needs, the self-direction planning, in terms of getting those things in place. It's not perfect. It needs a lot of our involvement, but you know, getting it set up and then training somebody else is where I'm about at right now, to be able to do my role. And then, with Joe living on his own or going to camp for folks, I say, to prepare the kids for there's going to be a time you're not around. I can't tell you the number of people I speak to that guys have never spent a night anywhere else,
mm,
other than at home. The first time that's going to happen for Joe, it can't be when I'm dead. I mean, that's just, listen, it's not easy for people, and I understand that, but there's ways to prepare for that. And again, facing it. And I think many of us just choose, I mean, we do that I don't know if I didn't have Joe, if I would be so focused on dying. I should,
mm,
because I do have another child. You need to be
right.
for financial, all of us need to do that. But it's obviously there's a different dynamic when you have somebody that's in need of care for the rest of their lives, to have a plan in place. And unfortunately, this need for seizing joy right now, especially this focus, is because I don't think any of us are having an easy go of it these days. I think in all my years with Joe, I don't remember a time being as difficult as it is now. And there's many, many factors for that. Advocacy for 21 plus years is really kind of in its infancy. We still
Mm,
don't really have something like we do with IEDA. So that's something we're going to have to really work on. And we're just there. So, yes. So going back to how do you prepare for that is, I know it's a financial plan, it's a mental plan, and it's also what are we going to do with these guys and give them an opportunity to practice this transition while you're still here. And I can't think of a better way to do it as best you can. Like I said, we've set Joe up in his own apartment, but it started with one night, and that's what we've done. And it's
right.
now he's 4 nights. Then it's staffing, and it's never simple, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
as complicated. The things that complicate it are not Joe, which is what I anticipated. I thought Joe's
Mm-hmm.
going to give everybody a hard time. Joe's going to, it's not Joe. It's the staffing, which is not their fault. People have lives.
Mm-hmm.
It's the funding. That's somebody's fault, but I don't know whose. But it's not Joe.
Probably a couple, but we won't get into that
We won't
conversation.
go there. But it's that's again, it's those when you do something, you're much better prepared for what's going to happen than just thinking about it.
Right.
You
Right.
anticipate is sometimes you anticipate it being a lot worse than it actually is in practice. So
Yes.
just do it is a phrase for a reason.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. So if you could look back and tell your younger Jackie self, if you could give her two pieces of advice, what would they be?
Hmm. Well, that's a good one. Um, I think what I would say is that I sh- I would definitely manage my health and my care for myself better than I did. It seems there were years we were in crisis. And then, I too took care of my parents, the sandwich thing. I'm past that now,
Mhm.
but I was always bottom of the list. And I'm kind of paying for it now. My knee hurts, this hurts. That doesn't help with all this stuff. So that I would take better physical care of myself earlier on. And
Okay.
um, I would tell myself it's going to be okay. I was so anxious about getting to where I am now, of Joe being a young adult, a man in his 20s, that the anticipation of it damn near killed me. And
Mm.
it has been not easy, but it wasn't as hard as made it out to be for myself. And I wish I had a glimpse ahead, but I think
Mm-hmm.
I've shared this story with others. When I first started to go to listen to other people talk and to get involved with advocacy, a mom who had a boy Joe's age at the time was the speaker. And she said, if I had had a crystal ball when he was 2 and I got a glimpse of him as a 29-year-old man, not verbal, still needs help with everything, I think I would have been so disappointed. But having lived through it all, I am so grateful for every milestone he has achieved. You have to kind of live through it. And you don't know that when you're a kid. What do they always say? Youth is wasted on the young. You don't realize that when you're younger,
Yeah.
you're just like, I got to do this and I got to do that and I got to do this. And you know what?
Yeah. And in
It
an
all
effort to
happened
wanting to be
anyway.
the perfect parent,
Exactly.
you set yourself up for a lot of anxiety, whether you have a child with a disability or not, actually always trying to do better and do give them what you didn't have, but it's actually not your life you're living. It's you're trying to support your child. So you do have to take a step back. So I totally understand that. Just I have three kids of my own, so I definitely understand that for sure.
That's always a
So
question people ask me too, because I have Joey's my oldest, and many times when the oldest is the child that's affected, it's the only child, for various reasons. But I'm so glad we had Andrew. And we were lucky that it all worked out the way it did. But I understand, there's people having that hesitation, but it's I wish I could tell my younger self that too, that was going to be okay.
I'm
There's a
sure
lot of
that was an
anxiety
anxious
about
move.
that.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of anxiety about that.
Taking his
But
temperature every 5 minutes, the poor kid. Making sure he wasn't having a seizure. I went through a bit of that.
but you can actually look back at it. I love the fact that you talk about taking very small steps and looking at how long it takes and being able to look back and see that you've actually come past that and you have something to look back at and be happy about and learn from. I think many parents could benefit from just putting themselves in that mindset for a moment.
Well, how many things have you gotten through? The EI stage, the diagnosis, the school placement, the bus, that in and of itself, we should all get awards. But
Yeah.
you've done it. You've done it. You've problem solved. You've gotten through it. So rely on yourself. When the next hurdle comes, you're going to get that through that too. You just have to believe that. It really helps. That helps me.
Well, that sounds good. Sounds like you have found some opportunities to seize joy and build community, which gives parents, hopefully, that listen to this podcast, hope that there is more to life and that there are many things that they will look back on and see as accomplishments. Um, I was just wondering, do you participate in any parent support groups? Or have you in the past?
It's to me, it's all a support group. As part of what we've done at SNAC is I prefer to look at them as parent education groups. I have found more value in that than gripe sessions. To me, that always depresses me. And that sometimes has been my experience with a support group. Just having a community of people who are in the same situation has been so helpful to me. And to learn from other people. I can't, how many times do you hear this? Everything I've ever learned, I've learned from another parent, who's been in it. It's, we cut to the quick, we give you the crib notes, we give you the answer, that's, so in terms of that's my support is just having a group of friends that I can rely on who are going through the same thing at each phase. That's been, but there's some great support groups. That's not something that I've needed. Probably because
Absolutely.
we have
We
community,
have two wonderful support groups actually, that I know the families really love. But I love what you said about the fact that it's every group is a support group in some way and gives you what you need out of it. And that's the most important thing. It doesn't have to be labeled as a
Oh,
support.
right, right. And I just think, like I said before, the opportunity generally to have that community is usually we form them at our kids' schools. And in our situations, the school is not always that nucleus, just because we're not necessarily where we live. It's not necessarily the school we chose. There's a lot of factors for that. But having said that, I still think you need to make the effort to make that your community as best you can. And I know it's hard. Believe me, I know it's hard. But we all know the schools that are better are the schools where the parents are involved. And I know how hard it is to do, believe me. But you get so much out of it. It's such a win-win all across the board by getting involved. I can't really emphasize that enough.
Oh, that sounds like really good advice. Well, our time has flown by. Any last insightful words after this beautiful conversation that we just had?
It's gonna be okay.
Oh,
That's
I
it.
like those words. I like those words a lot. Well, thank you, Jackie, for sharing your story, sharing your experiences, sharing some tips for our families. I hope that someone will find ways for them to seize joy and build their community as they move on. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about Joe as the years go by. So don't be a stranger. Let's keep in touch.
We will.
And
We will.
I look forward to having more of these wonderful conversations. So I hope that our audience stays tuned for the next episode of Seizing Joy and Building Community.
Thank you so much, and thank you for all the great work you do. Include is in great hands.
Thank you so much, Jackie.
Be well.
You too.